started to move forward in the process and I stopped myself because I thought it might be a good talking point on camera for you. Where on this area I started to layer a second time, and we didn't really talk about that. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to see what I do. If you don't like working with the oil pastels, you could forgo that step and work strictly with paint. So with paint, you can either employ both oil pastels and paints layered like we talked about, and you can expand the black and white to include colors. Or you can do a layer of oil pastel, then just do paint over and over each layer, or just stick with your paints. You're just not gonna get that really etched in look without the oil pastel. So I do encourage you to experiment with that. But I wanna talk about even more covering up. If you don't produce a foundation piece that has both dark and light in it, your finished piece is not going to have elements of dark and light as we deconstruct them. So just keep that in mind. So while I typically would not create a finished piece that had a lot of dark areas in it like this, I do want that for the deconstruction process. So that's just something I wanted to put out there. But I wanted to show you real quick what could happen if you use a colorful paint over the top. So let's etch in a few more layers of pastel. And I'm going to use some blue and some lime green, and I'm going to go back in and put some more hot pink in because I always really like how that looks. And because I'm working with green, I'm just going to go to the edge of it and not over it this time. And then I think I'll even add a little more white because that mutes my pinks. Okay, so now that I have that, I wanted to show you what happens if you add a layer of color over the top. So you can use something a little more fluid, like that golden teal. I'm going to use this little bit thicker Winsor Newton acrylic in Cobalt Turquoise Light, it's called. And let me just get my brush. And I'm going to go right over the top, just as I did when I was working with the black and white. So I'm going to take it off the edge, I'm going to scrub it over the oil pastels, and my brush was a little wet, so that's why you're seeing it look a little more translucent. And now, if I were to go over that color with a little white, I could alter the color to be a little more muted. So I'm really experimenting with the covering up techniques. And I'm going over the existing text. I have like 3 layers of text there, and that's what's giving it all that chunkiness and depth. And by continuing to move these pieces together, I'm really covering things up. So now I would grab one of my pencils, and I think this time I might take something in this, maybe I'll use a yellow. That might be harder to see, but it might be interesting. And I'm going to dig in. And if I start getting those ridges from my paint, remember you can sharpen your pencil or you can wipe the tip off as you go and pick up those extra chunks. And I am getting a little bit of the residual yellow from my pencil tip. And you can see by doing this multiple times, I've gone from pretty to ugly to pretty to ugly to dark to light. I'm really getting these under layers of this text to become super interesting. And then I can do the same thing on this side. Now on this side, I think I'm gonna work with some pinks. So I'm going to do a little pink. Then I'm going to come in with some orange, going right over my existing text. And I think I might go with some yellow. And all of these colors can mix, so I can come out to the edge and do that. And then I always just like to add in some white to kind of mute and blend those colors. And this time I'm going to use a combination of this Whole Beam Luminous Rose color, which I love. And just because I haven't stopped to clean my brushes, I'm going to use a little bit different brush. This is a flat brush. It's just not super coarse. It's a number 8. And I'm going to scrub over the top of this with a little of this bright luminous rose. And then I'm going to come in with white. And don't forget, if you're working with brushes you love, you really need to clean them because of these oil pastels. It's bad enough when paint hardens on them, but oil pastels are very oily, so they can ruin your brush. Scrubbing over the top, moving my paint up and over some of the ink marks to kind of blend them. And I'm really not painting, I'm really scrubbing. And keep adding white if you want to tone down the pink, or whatever color you might be working on. The more paint layers you add, the chunkier it gets, but it creates some really nice texture. And then I'm just going to let it, because it's so thick, I'm going to let it sit for just a moment while I choose a brush. And I might go totally off grid and do something different. I was going to use graphite, but I think I'm going to use this turquoisey color. Now remember, we're deconstructing all of this down the road. Certainly we can make copies of our work. Certainly we can preserve the original. But for cutting up purposes, we really want to have enough areas of etching. So this is very thick. I might be cleaning my brush with each layer. And I might be cleaning the tip as well as areas around each letter with my cloth if I need to. And really dig in, because then you want to pull up, if possible, the layers that you just added along with layers beneath it. And you can also experiment with different types of fonts depending on how creative you want to get. If you have a big area like this, you can change colors. Just lightly brush those etchings off as you go. And just fill a nice area with your etching. This can also, if you've had a phrase or sentence added and you still have some wet paint, you can add some marks by using the same technique. Just choose a pencil and etch in the wet paint. And don't be afraid to change your pencil colors, because it really adds interest. And this is partially dry over here, but I might get a few areas where I can dig in. And I'm not worried if I get these peaks too much. If I can't really scrub them off easily, we can do that when it dries. So unless it's interfering with what you're actually etching, don't worry about all those extra bits and pieces of paint until the end. And I'm going to probably not add another area of that, but instead come up here and maybe add in a little bit of paint and marks that way. So I'm gonna let this dry. Then I can brush up all that extra paint, and then we can really start moving along. Now, as this dries, before you let it set aside to dry, if you want to add any other areas of etching, whether that's just marks, whether it's more text, whether it's a simple sketch, anything, you're really going to need to do that while the paint is wet, before it's set 100%. So this is the time to kind of look at your piece and see. I typically concentrate it to one area so that I can add some abstract marks in other areas. So I'm thinking I might let this rest now and dry and come back to it. But I love the addition of all the different colors of pencil marks. You can see what's happening now. It's going off topic because the inspiration is beginning to flow, and that's what we want to see happen with your work. So continue to play and experiment with this, and I will meet you back here for the next lesson.